So, all right, you guys, like, what's the most annoying thing to learn in the universe? Some of my friends think that it is computing sciences, and yeah, there's a lot of different random things that are involved with it just to try to get good. Today, let's just start from the very basics. Let's start with HTML and CSS. We will make a new directory that is just called HTML me. HTML me, good buddy, and we'll change directory into it. And then we have an editor that's been installed that's called Atom. So the period means open up Atom looking at this given folder. Here's the thing. In this video, all we do is look at how HTML and CSS work together. That is it. There it is, the HTML me folder. And this is an editor you can get for free. It's written by the GitHub people. All I want now is a new file inside of this thing, an HTML file. So we will name this thing index.html. Index is a thing that we use to say, show me like the main idea. Show me the overall, overarching everything. And then all I want is some HTML. I mean, there it is, your very first tag. It has an opening tag and a closing tag. The slash is to indicate that this is the conclusion of that thought. Some tags self-close, but many will have them to be balanced, like you see here. Inside of HTML, let's put a couple of things. There's head, so we'll make that balance, right? And then there's body, and we'll balance that thing again as well. And now we are starting to get a web page that is respectable. Inside of the head, there are certain things you can have that you can't have in the body. Like if I put some text out here, it won't show up on the web page, surprisingly. Or at least, okay, you shouldn't really put text in here. It should not show up on the web page. But the body is where the crux of the page should exist. Inside of the head, we could have things like, what's the title of the page? Title is, give me some HTML in my life. And we see that again, we have these balancing tags, an opening and a closing that would refer to a concept of the title. Over in the body, we can finally then have some content. Content can just be text, and it can be more, but this is enough for us right now. So we have a title for this given page. It has not yet been saved, so we see this circular spot up above. I will press on this Mac, I will press Command S, and then the spot goes away. So it's saved. And now, if I go back out to the terminal, if I do ls, it shows that I have that file there. Isn't that cute? And I can open it up in the web browser by just doing open index. I can even just like type the very first little few part of it, just like 3 letters worth, and press tab, and it knows that it's there. And then it's like, all right, I'll open that for you. And hi, I'm text. There it was. And on the tab up above, if you notice, like I know I have a lot of tabs open, but give me some HTML in my life. That's what that thing says if I mouse over that tab. So the title worked to be able to put that up in the tab. And it says, hi, I'm text. And it describes the file location on my local machine that is referring to. So, my name is Lauren, by the way. Hello. Welcome to this video about HTML and CSS. And we made that folder, if you recall. We did make dir of HTML me. And then within Atom, we had said we wanted to make a file that was called index.html. So we have the very most basic HTML file I think that you could ever do. It's like a hello world, if you want to say that, of HTML. I will now Command Tab to be able to go back over to the Atom editor. And I want to do some more things. I want to see what CSS can do along with HTML. I guess before we get started, let's put this hi, I'm text inside of something that is a division on the web page, a div. Divs are extremely popular to be able to put content inside of. You'll see divs nested inside of divs. What it means is a rectangular area of the screen that can have whatever you want inside of it. It could be an image, it could be other divs, it could be text, as we see here. So right now, at its default, let's find out actually what sort of a region it takes by saying as well, this div should have an ID. And we'll say that it's my div. This my div idea is something that we can say, let's make a background color to be able to color it. A couple ways to make that happen. We could put in here style equals background color, and then pick some color that you want, like fuchsia. Well, I don't know, maybe you hate fuchsia. Maybe it's just purple. So that's a way to do this, background color. And this is called kebab casing, the way that we call out these things, these ideas that CSS has attributes. We can specify the CSS attribute of background color, and then we can specify some friendly name. There's many, many, hundreds actually, of different colors that can be prescribed this way. Not just purple, but we can have this weird code of hexadecimal. A red, green, blue part. So there's a red part, a green part, and a blue part. Each is 2 digits long. They range, let's think about it like right now from 0 to 99, I guess. So what if we do all red? Let's give it that. Background color of a lot of red. And then it says, hi, I'm text. I'll save this out. Now there's that spot again. If I press Command S, it'll try to save it. Or if I also, by the way, have gone up to the File menu, there's a File menu here, then I could choose Save. So I've saved it, and I'll do Command Tab to go back over to where my browser was. I can reload by Command R or this refresh thing, and there it is. This blood red background. We said that it should be a lot of red. And it said, like, hi, I'm text. That's barely legible. How about we also then have a foreground color thing as well? So we see, by the way, that the reason that I had actually taken you down this road is because I wanted to see what the region was that the div had taken. And we see now that it's taken apparently the entire width of the screen. It is what divs do. Divs are block elements. They like to say, I'm going to consume all of the horizontal area that I can. That's just how divs operate. We'll see another thing in a moment. Let's get back over to the Atom editor in which we were working with our code here. So again, we had said, like, this is one way that you can call out this given style for this given div. Here is another way. Notice that this div says that it has an ID, and then it has some text inside, and there's the closing tag for the div. Let's steal this code and put it into its own style that's a part of the head. So this is actually frowned upon. What I've done at the first step there, although it worked, to have this inline style, this is not what is recommended. People would think that you're a little strange, actually, for doing this sort of an inline style. I mean, it works, and they wouldn't, like, frown terribly at you, I guess, but this is not like the way that HTML people do things. So I'll press Command X to cut this thing out to the clipboard, and then up above, inside of the head, note that I can put a style element in place, and it has its own closing style thing. So everything that exists inside of here, whatever I put inside of here, is going to be style things. And I will paste the same stuff that I had on the clipboard right in place of those question marks, and I'll say not style equals, because we already know that it's style. I'll instead say I want to refer to that given div. So somehow I want to then say that that's the div that I want to refer to. And it's then with the pound symbol and the ID that's involved. So pound symbol, my div. And then I put all of the style inside of curlies. I don't know if you can hear my neighbors downstairs, but they're really having a good party tonight. I think there's some wine involved, and I think they're really having... Can you hear them? It's like every once in a while a little shriek. Anyway, we have the style all in place. This is to indicate, pound symbol is indicate I have an ID that I would like to refer to. Of all the things that will be on this main part of the page and the body of the page, if I have multiple divs, you cannot duplicate these IDs. Each div must have its own unique ID. So if I put another div out here, then I could put something like my div 2 or something else. I cannot duplicate, or I should not anyway. I mean, I can do it, but it just won't work well. I should not duplicate these IDs. Each one refers to one div or element. Each one refers to one thing inside of this body of all of our code. Hi, I'm text number 2. Let's say that this thing is. My div 2 is text number 2. My div has a background color that is red, a lot of red. Let's make another my div style and say that my div 2, if you remember, these two digits refer to red, and these two to green, and then these two to blue. Let's move this 99 thing around. Let's make it so that the background is a lot of green. Green's in the middle there. Also, we had seen that like the text was hardly even visible for my div. Inside of these curlies, we can put a lot of stuff, and let's start to do things in more of a proper format. How about? So we're saying that the background color is some red. How about we say that the foreground color is something like white? We do that simply with just color. We can do white with all red, all green, all blue. I didn't say that the F's were everything, I guess, kind of indicated that 99 was the upper range for that, but technically the upper range for this weird sort of a color way that we put things together with red, green, and blue, technically the upper range is the F's. So if I wanted to make it like as red as can possibly be, it's not actually 99, but rather FF. Or as green as it could possibly be would be FF right there, but it ends up being like this lime green, and it's too green, really. I'll leave this as 99s. Anyway, we could do this with a hash symbol like this. We can put 6 digits on board, numbers 0 through 9, letters A through F, and then it provides a color. Or we can just call out a named color, like we said, like purple before. What about we just say white? We end each of these with a semicolon. And let's make also over here with my div 2, let's make a couple of different color sort of things here, not just background color, but also we'll have an additional color for the foreground. We'll say that the color here is yellow. So a green background and then a yellow text. Here we have a red background and a white text. My div and my div 2. You're following along, right? And by the way, we said that these are block elements that are out on the page. And as such, they consume the entire width of the screen at this point. We will press Command S to be able to save out this given file. Pressing Command Tab, then we go over to the browser and we refresh. I've saved it out, so it's still looking in that same sort of a file, our index.html, in the folder that we built. We'll refresh, and then there it is. Now things are much more visible. This is my div. This is my div 2. And maybe I don't want them to consume the entire width of the screen. Let's go back into Atom. And let's say that on both of these things, we've got display of, and look at all these options that we have. Lots of different things. I'm going to choose inline block. It still acts a lot like a div would act. Like normally it's a block element. It acts like a block element in many ways, but it can be stacked next to each other. It does not consume the entire line altogether. Block, we saw, like if I didn't say display, then it actually defaults to block because divs are a block element. Well, this consumes the entire line, from left to right, the whole width of the screen. But if I instead say inline block, and also I'll copy this and put it down here with my div 2, I'll save this out, which then takes the spot away, and then I re-render, and now I see that they're next to each other. Inline block still keeps them as being rectangular things, but it puts them right next to each other. There's a lot more to the story, as you might expect. Like let's see, if I had all divs, maybe on the page, I want like all divs to behave in this way. I want them to go against the grain. Don't do your normal thing of being a block element. Instead, hey, all divs do this thing instead. All right. Instead of having to replicate this twice now, my div and my div 2, I could say that there's a style just in general for all the div stuff out there. And then anything that's a div, do a display of inline block. Notice that the style has been placed inside of these style tags. We have put it so far inside of the head, and that's like the place we're generally supposed to put that. I mean, you don't have to. It could actually be as a part of the body as well, and that will work. But it's kind of best practice. So what we're showing you here is a lot of best practice sort of an idea. I'll save out this new change that I've made saying that all div things have a display of inline block. The pound symbol, do you remember what that was? The pound symbol is to indicate that we're pointing at an ID of something. But if I don't have a pound symbol, I am pointing at an element at large. All divs. So this is to indicate any div that you find whatsoever, make it an inline block. So I'll go ahead and save this out and rerun the page, and then you see, all right, not a lot of change, because it's still doing an inline block. We had taken it away. So like normally, if I would not have this, like in fact, let's comment this out. Here's another trick. If you do slash splat, that splat is a shift 8. It's an asterisk, on the keyboard. This comments out a given CSS style so that you can see what happens if it was not actually there. This is if the whole thing actually wasn't there, because this is the only attribute that I've applied on this selector. Here it's looking for divs and it's saying what to do to them, but here I've commented out the line that it was doing anything at all. So it won't do a damned thing. Re-rendering, we're still then back at the whole display of block as opposed to a display of inline block. So now I'll take away these comment things, save it out, and re-render, and yeah, there it is, back to all divs being a display of inline block. Now, I wonder what else we can do. What if we say that all divs should have an orange border? So border, and border has 3 different things that I fill in before the semicolon. First, a number of pixels or other sort of measurement. Oftentimes people will work with pixels when it's something thin, such as a border around something. The idea is that all divs are going to have a border around them. How about 3 pixels? So what we do there is 3px. That means 3 pixels. Now we need to say what kind of a format that we want. Dashed, double line, solid. Gosh, we'll do dashed just to be weird. And then we've got a color, and orange was a color that we wanted. We'll save that out again, and then now, wow, what do you know? There's a dashed orange border of 3 pixels in width that surrounds both of these interesting divs. That's cute. All right, next trick. I would like some sort of offset, like put this in a different part of the screen. I want to have this to be not in its normal place. I wonder if we can actually stack both of these things on top of each other. We've talked about changing the way that divs work. They fundamentally are a block element, but here we've turned it on its ear and said, I want you to be an inline block instead. There's another sort of a positioning trick. We can do position, and here's the various things that we can choose. Absolute, we will try that one. There's also relative that becomes somewhat interesting. And fixed means that if you have a lot of content on the page, if you're scrolling around, it doesn't scroll with the rest of the page. It actually stays fixed as a part of wherever it had started. But absolute and relative are fairly interesting. Let's do a position of absolute. Instead of rendering next to each other, they're just stacked on top of each other. Let's now modify the position. For my div, we'll say that it starts from the right, offset by 100 pixels. And for my div 2, we'll say that it starts from the bottom, 100 pixels. So, not having said anything about left, top, right, or bottom, by default, these things didn't know where to go, and then they just started at the upper left. That's where content starts being written on the page anyway. And both div 1 and div 2 here, my div and my div 2, they both stacked on top of each other. I'll save out these small changes and re-render the page, and we see that the first div is offset from the right by 100 pixels. This again was with position absolute. And then we see that this one is offset 100 pixels from the bottom. My div and my div 2, something from the right, something from the bottom, and offset. Going back to the code, the reason that this works at all is because position absolute has been chosen for all divs. And then we can indicate things like the first one, the red one, it goes 100 pixels in from the right. Can you imagine if we had also specified top 50 pixels? What would that look like? Or over here, this is offset from the bottom, but it's not offset from the left. So we could say left 50 pixels on this guy. Hopefully you're starting to see some of the power of what CSS can do to be able to move things around on the page, because that is of paramount importance as you are studying what CSS is all about. Again, I'll save this bad boy with Command S, or I could have chosen the file menu and save. Go back over to Atom and I'll re-render it. And by the way, if I move this, did you know that this tries to keep consistent? I haven't refreshed the page yet. At this point, notice that it's consistently trying to stay 100 pixels from the right and this guy 100 pixels from the bottom. And as I resize the page, it tries to keep the peace on that. So now I'll refresh. And now the 50 pixels is offset from the left for my div 2, and the 50 pixels over here for my div. And if I move a little bit around the screen, it still tries to maintain all of that. It's pretty awesome, isn't it? This is with position absolute. Let's watch it crater now. We'll go back over to the code, and we'll take away position absolute by just commenting it out. Again, it's a slash splat to start it off and a splat slash to conclude it. And it could have been the next line that had concluded it. That's okay. You can have 100 lines in here. Hi, Toaster, Mitt, Barvis, McGillicuddy. You don't have any sort of a risk in writing whatever the heck you want to write. I don't care what you want to write in here. It's a comment. Slash splat, like that opens a comment. It doesn't care. Saving it out, rerunning the page. Oh, if you don't have position absolute, it doesn't know how to do these, like scrolling. It doesn't care. Like moving from the edges of the screen and having different spaces and widths and sizes and such, like it doesn't care. But when we bring back, if I want to undo the changes, by the way, just like if you're working with Office applications or other things, you press Command Z and it undoes stuff. It just like reverses. So I'll undo some things with Command Z, a lot of Command Z. It takes away the thought that I'd commented out. I'll save that again, and oh gosh, yeah, there it is. Rerunning the page with a Command R. It now is back to what we saw before. Another thing that we saw the position could do, there was relative. Let's put in relative. Save that out. And it went away totally. The reason being, relative from the very upper left of where we would have normally started writing things out, I want you to offset things like go essentially like have some space to the right and have some space on the top. So it threw it off the page entirely. Let's change these out so we actually have some relative position that makes some sense. Let's do left 100 pixels and instead of top, well, yeah, actually, let's keep top. That's good. Top 100 pixels. So it's 100, 100 from what it would have normally rendered, like whatever you are normally. Let's just render 100 pixels in from that. On offset, though, putting 100 pixels in at the left of this thing, so scooching it over to the right. Don't let that confuse you. You know, you're putting 100 pixels in, thereby moving it to the right, thereby moving it down. I guess it's like when you're flying an airplane and like you pull the stick back and the plane goes up, or you push the stick forward and the plane goes down. Normally people wouldn't think that, I guess, unless you're actually a pilot or something, I guess. So it's like the opposite of what you normally would have thought for the up-down motion when you're flying an airplane. Left-right, I have nothing for you there, because like if you take an airplane stick and you push it to the left, you're going to start flying left, like that thing, you know, starts slanting over the left. It's really good. Anyway, aside from flying planes, this guy, why don't we see it? We said that we wanted to go and add some pixels in to the left and the bottom. Let's now add in the same 100 and 100 just to be able to have some fun there. So both of these things will have 100, 100, and both of them actually will be left and top. An offset of left and top of 100 pixels for my div and my div 2. Saving that out and re-rendering, oh gosh, there they are. Like the first one normally would have rendered right here, if you recall. The red one, my div, would have ended up right there. But we've offset it relative to its normal positioning that it would have originally started. We've offset it by 100 pixels each time. And then, by the way, the second one would have normally rendered right here, right? And we've offset that guy by 100 pixels and 100 pixels. But let's now take the second guy and undo any sort of pixel crap whatsoever, right? Like this guy's out. And then we get that. This guy from a relative offset was relatively positioned over here. And then it acted as if div number 1 was really rendered. And then div number 2 came in and said, I will start wherever you think wherever the last guy left off. Just let me know where the last guy left off. The machine considers that it would have been, div number 1 would have been right here in this void. It had scooched it just because of that relative offset. You starting to follow along? What if I say that this guy is absolute and this guy is relative? Then it would have been from 0, 0. Absolute means don't change the offset for the next thing that you're going to render. Let's actually see if we had not offset it any sort of left for the first div involved. If we just say that we offset it from the top 100 pixels, notice that they line up now like this. I've only scooched it down 100 pixels. And then the next guy. Can we go negative, by the way? Let's say that we want to do like negative 10. So instead of it being top of 100, you can do negative positioning as well, which would have been the same thing as if I had said bottom of 10. We save this out, this top of negative 10, and that goes like 10 pixels up from what it normally would have been. But I could have also have said bottom of 10, and I'll save that, and I'll re-render. I promise I'm re-rendering, and it looks the exact same because bottom of 10 is move it up from the bottom. Absolute positioning means from whatever screen edge, but relative is where it would have normally just by default have been rendered. Last trick before we call it quits for this little silly video is to be able to have that fixed positioning. Again, this video has tried to showcase things to do with how HTML is put together. We have put together the main crux of a page, which is found in the body. This is where you should generally put all of your content. And then inside of the head up above, we have put style that impacts what's happening down below in the body. We have these what we call selectors. Some of them can select an entire everything that is a div, okay? So this is selecting elements, a selector for all of the elements. Some can select things by its ID. Another very common way to be able to refer to different items on the page is with class. Unlike IDs, which IDs, as we mentioned earlier, should only exist once on the page, classes can exist many times. So we can have many divs down below that would have like a class of indented or something, and then you can have like an offset from the left, and then it's indented. So that's represented not with a pound symbol, by the way, but with a period. Another video at another time, we'll show you more of this kind of trickery. But gosh, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. This is enough for the moment. So we will now still have our divs relatively positioned, but you know what? We can override that relative positioning on any of these individual divs. I mean, this is more general. Div at large. I mean, if you're a div, generally you should have a position of relative. But then this becomes more specific. There is an idea of CSS specificity, how specific we get to be able to modify different elements on the page. Specificity would say, if I define something here, it would trump the things that I've defined at a more general level. So here's like all divs at large. That's more general. But then here is a specific element with this specific ID, which is my div. That's very specific. Anyway, my div, I want to say that the position here is fixed. Of the various different positionings that I can choose, I will choose fixed. Further, I will now go in and put a whole mother load of line breaks after these divs, just so that the page would start to have scroll bars is all I'm looking for, like something that would have a lot of content. So this is content and then a line break. And I'll replicate that many times. Copy it with Command C, and I'll Command V this thing until the cows come home. There's now 100 lines or so of content in there, so it starts to become very long. So those two divs, they have been very happy being next to each other so far. And in fact, for this example, we can take away some of this other sort of positioning that we've done so far. We don't care about bottom and the border will keep of those things, but the bottom, the top, the left, the right, we don't care about those pixel offsets. We'll keep everything else as if it were. We'll save it out. We'll re-render the page. And then that's text number 2. Notice what happens when I scroll around. We have the one that is fixed is the first one. And then the second one with a position of relative has now been the thing that starts in the very uppermost left. And then this guy stays. No matter how much I scroll, that guy with a position of fixed stays exactly where it was. Now let's add back in for my div that has that position of fixed. Now we can have that left and top business. So left of 100 pixels and a top of 50 pixels. So a little bit from the top and a lot from the left. That's where we want to offset that guy. We save it, we re-render it, and now it is still position fixed and it's hanging out right there. This has been our small example of how CSS works with various different HTML elements. We hope that you're having a whole good fun bit of time here learning HTML and CSS. There's a lot more to the story. There's a lot of resources out online. We hope that some of this gets you armed and dangerous. All of this has happened in just one file, but we could have had 2 separate files that would, like, the HTML would go and point over to a CSS file that would say all these things. But we just wanted to keep it simple. We hope this made some sense, and hey, enjoy. Don't get scared of this stuff. It's just code. Code doesn't care. We should care as little about code as code cares about us. Enjoy, you guys.